Do you sit down to work, but your brain just goes blank? Do you feel guilty for resting, but never actually feel rested? In psychology, there is a massive difference between being lazy, which is a choice, and being mentally exhausted, which is a physiological state. That difference matters more than most people realize, because when mental exhaustion is mistaken for laziness, people don't recover. They push harder. And pushing harder on an already exhausted system doesn't create motivation, it creates shutdown. Mental exhaustion is not about effort, it's about capacity. And when capacity is exceeded for too long, the brain changes how it functions in order to protect itself. One of the first signs of this is what many people experience as brain fog. You sit down to work, open a document, look at the task, and nothing happens. You're not distracted. You're not even thinking about something else. Your mind just feels empty, slow, unresponsive. From the outside, this looks like procrastination. From the inside, it feels like paralysis. This happens because the part of the brain responsible for starting tasks has been overloaded for too long. Stress, constant pressure, emotional labor, multitasking, and information overload all compete for the same limited mental resources. When those resources are depleted, the brain doesn't try harder, it freezes. This freeze is not laziness, it's a protective response. The brain is preventing further overload by temporarily shutting down non-essential functions. Unfortunately, modern life doesn't recognize this signal. It labels it as a failure of discipline. And when you believe that label, you add guilt and pressure. Pressure increases stress. Stress deepens the freeze. That's why forcing yourself often makes things worse. You're not refusing to work. Your brain simply doesn't have the capacity to initiate. Another common sign of mental exhaustion is irritability over small things. You snap more easily. You feel overwhelmed by minor inconveniences. Conversations that once felt neutral now feel draining or even irritating. This happens because emotional regulation requires mental energy. Staying patient, calm, and emotionally balanced is not automatic. It's an active process that depends on available cognitive resources. When those resources run low, emotional regulation is one of the first systems to weaken. The brain shifts into conservation mode. It stops buffering emotions. Your tolerance drops. Small stressors feel big. This doesn't mean you're becoming a worse person. It means your nervous system no longer has the energy to regulate emotions the way it normally does. Irritability is often not a personality change. It's a sign of depletion. Another sign that's often misunderstood is numbing behavior. This includes scrolling on your phone for hours, watching videos back to back, or consuming content without really enjoying it. Not because it's fun, but because it helps you avoid thinking or feeling. Psychologically, this is not rest. This is dopamine seeking. When the brain is mentally exhausted, it looks for stimulation that requires no effort and no emotional engagement. Short, fast, unpredictable content provides small dopamine spikes without demanding attention or decision-making. But dopamine does not equal recovery. True rest restores the nervous system. Numbing behaviors only distract the brain from exhaustion. That's why you can spend hours scrolling and still feel drained afterward. Your system never entered recovery mode. If you recognize yourself here, comment "recharge" below, not as a label, as a signal that your system is asking for relief. Mental exhaustion also shows up as decision fatigue. Simple choices feel overwhelming. Deciding what to eat, what to wear, or what task to start feels exhausting. You may avoid decisions altogether, not because you don't care, but because choosing feels painful. Every decision consumes mental energy. When that energy is depleted, the brain begins to avoid decisions in order to conserve resources. This is not indecisiveness, it's cognitive exhaustion. This is why routines often help exhausted people. They remove the need for constant decision-making and reduce mental load. Less choice means less strain on an already depleted system. Another sign is disrupted sleep. You feel exhausted all day, but when night comes, your mind won't shut off. Your body feels tired, but your brain feels wired. This happens because prolonged mental stress keeps the nervous system in a state of hyperarousal. Stress hormones remain elevated even when you try to rest. The brain doesn't feel safe enough to fully power down. This is why simply sleeping longer doesn't always fix mental exhaustion. Recovery requires nervous system regulation, not just sleep quantity. Mental exhaustion can also cause a loss of motivation or pleasure in things you once enjoyed. Hobbies feel heavy, interests feel distant, joy feels muted. In psychology, this is called anhedonia, and while it's often associated with depression, it can appear as a temporary response to overload. When the brain is exhausted, it reduces engagement to conserve energy. Pleasure requires participation, attention, and emotional involvement. When resources are low, the brain pulls back. This doesn't mean you've lost who you are. It means your system is protecting itself. Finally, mental exhaustion often becomes physical. Headaches, muscle tension, jaw clenching, digestive issues, and chronic fatigue are common. The mind and body are not separate systems. Prolonged mental stress activates the body's stress response. Muscles stay tense, breathing becomes shallow. The body carries what the mind hasn't processed. This is why mental exhaustion feels so heavy, because it lives in the body as much as in the mind. Laziness is a choice. Mental exhaustion is a state. One responds to discipline, the other responds to recovery. If you see yourself in these signs, the solution is not to push harder, it's to recognize what your system is actually asking for. And if sign number 3 stood out the most, comment "recharge" below. Not for motivation, for permission.